Hello, audience, and thank you for coming on tonight and attending and taking part in our post-film discussion. Again, I'm Scott Bricker, the Director of Product Development and Interim Vice President of Destination Development at Travel Oregon. As we all know, this has been a monumental year fueled by our friendly global pandemic, COVID-19. We know that visitation to public lands has been incredibly high, if not breaking record volumes. And unfortunately, enough people are not recreating responsibly. That, coupled with reduced staff and budgets, our public places have experienced high impacts and face serious challenges. In response to these challenges, Travel Oregon is working to be a partner in the efforts. We've been doing our part by supporting improved responsible recreation through several projects and communications efforts. We've pivoted our marketing efforts and are focused on messages that align with the governor's office and support the state's tourism economy by encouraging visitors and Oregonians to have safe trips, follow regulations, be prepared, and inform them about ways to help. We're making strong efforts in visitor management. We've built on the strengths of our responsible recreation outdoor campaign, Take Care Out There, broadening the approach to not just describe responsible behavior while recreating outdoors, but also to include behavior expected when recreating or patronizing businesses during COVID-19. Our industry teams have supported trail stewardship groups and through the statewide investments, helping fund trail stewardship, coordination calls run by key trail organizations, and providing tools and PPE to trail stewardship groups around the state. We're also collaborating with our regional destination management organizational partners to support investments in outdoor recreation stewardship and development around the state. And of course, we're excited to be here as part of the team producing the Oregon Outdoor Recreation Summit. So with that, I'm excited to moderate a panel of outdoor recreation leaders to dive much more deeply into the issue of responsible recreation. Our panelists are Jennifer Magby from the Oregon Department of Forestry, Arica Sears from the Oregon Coast Visitors Association, and Natalie Ferraro from Trailkeepers of Oregon. And rather than me providing a full introduction, I'd like each panelist, perhaps let's say in the order that I introduced you, to share in your own words more about the organization you represent, how you interface with the issues of responsible, how you interface with issues of responsible outdoor recreation. Jennifer, you want to kick us off?
Sure, good evening. As Scott said, I'm Jennifer Magby. I am the director of the Tillamook Forest Center. I am here representing the Oregon Department of Forestry. I've been with the Oregon Department of Forestry just under 8 years, and I've worn a number of hats as a recreation planner and also as recreation unit manager in the Tillamook district. So I have been working on ground in the field with our recreating public, primarily in the Tillamook State Forest, but we do have recreation on our other state forests, including Clatsop State Forest, Santiam State Forest, and in some of our other forest areas as well. So I'm happy to be here on this panel this evening.
Thanks. Arica, you want to go?
Yeah, hey Scott, hey everybody out there. My name is Arica Sears, and I am the Destination Management Coordinator for the Oregon Coast Visitors Association. We are one of 7 regional destination management organizations in the entire state of Oregon, creating, implementing, and managing projects and partnerships along the entire Oregon coast. Really exciting job. We get to work with amazing people like Natalie, Scott, and Jennifer. In the world of recreation, everyone on our entire team is an outdoor recreationalist. We all live on the coast, but it's also really built into our organization. So whether that's having a conversation with the community about a new or updated recreation experience, to marketing outdoor recreation and pairing that with stewardship messaging, to even going with global sales where we go to places like Australia, New Zealand, Germany, Canada, to share these amazing experiences with people around the world. Although I weave my time and energy with all of our staff members and all the stages of recreation, I really focus on the community conversation and development part, as well as stewardship messaging.
Thanks, Arica. All right. Yeah, Natalie, go for it.
Hey, everyone. I'm Natalie Ferraro. I'm the engagement manager for Trailkeepers of Oregon. We're a statewide stewardship nonprofit that builds, maintains, and advocates for hiking trails across the state. And specifically, I manage our Trail Ambassador program, where volunteers table at trailheads to help visitors understand leave no trace and responsible recreation ethics.
Awesome. Well, let's dive a little bit deeper. We have definitely heard that local populations have struggled with influx of outdoor recreation visitors, especially over this summer, again, fueled by COVID-19 and people really trying to get outdoors and socially distance themselves. Would you share your perspectives on what shifts in visitor behaviors you've seen this year? And again, specifically in light of COVID-19, that may have exacerbated any negative situations. And I'll just let anyone chime in, so feel free. Maybe why don't we just start with Natalie? How we go with you?
Yeah, sure. I would say for us, a lot of those shifts came in the form of stories from our land manager partners. I think every week we would hear news stories and horror stories about what park rangers were experiencing through visitor behaviors, from closures and those kinds of things. Our Trail Ambassador program focuses specifically right now on the Gorge and Mount Hood. So that was where a lot of my experience was coming from. And I think a lot of city-based recreation, like pools and things like that, being closed meant that there was a really large surge in first-time recreationalists to a lot of places. But at the same time, a lot of sites were closed, and so they were really concentrated in some really high-use areas, which just kind of led to a perfect storm of people not really knowing what to expect when they got there, not knowing where to park, and so they would park anywhere, especially if it was already full. Trash cans overflowing because land manager capacity was also cut. It was just kind of a perfect storm of everything. And while our trail ambassadors generally had positive experiences interacting with visitors at the trails when they were actually able to get out there, I know that there's a lot of experiences firsthand where volunteers were out that didn't have very positive experiences. And I'm sure the other folks on the call here can share some of those stories. But yeah, it was just a perfect storm of first-time visitors due to a scarcity of activities and low staffing on the land manager part. And also our volunteer programming was really put on hold for quite some time until we figured out how we could do it safely again. So those are definitely the biggest impacts that we saw.
Yeah, significant. Arica, you want to share, kind of build on that? Anything that you've experienced out on the coast?
Yeah, so we have a new thing I like to call beach living rooms. If you haven't experienced or that essentially means you bring everything you could ever possibly need down to the beach with you. So it is kind of an incredible behavior shift. People are really concerned about going into restaurants, stopping by stores, interacting with anybody else. So we see people have these like little wagons that they bring down that has, like a Costco sized plastic silverware box and tables and tablecloths and food. And so we're seeing this sort of beach living room style behavior that's pretty new. And then to accompany that, we are seeing a lot more plastic and trash on the beaches. And that's a combination of essentially every food business offering to-go opportunities, as well as like what Natalie mentioned, a lot of the, county parks, state parks, different land management agencies didn't have the capacity or the funding to provide the services that they had in the past. So we are certainly seeing a lot more trash and plastic on our beaches and on our trails. Another thing that's kind of new this year is I'm hearing anecdotally on the North Coast that only barely 40% of visitors are repeat visitors. So what that means is 60% and probably more than 60% of people that are coming to our trails, that are fishing in our rivers, that are surfing in our ocean are new. Their first time to the Oregon coast, which is really scary because that means that they could be doing these recreation opportunities in an unsafe way. They could be unintentionally damaging our natural resources. But it's also really exciting that people are coming out to the Oregon coast, that people are going and experiencing the recreation opportunities Oregon has for the first time. So I think we have this really new and excited audience that wants to learn about and interact with outdoor recreation. And I'll let Jennifer talk about land management experiences. I don't know if you want to add on to any of the negative behaviors that Natalie was mentioning.
Yeah, it's hard to talk about the negative after just watching those beautiful films, but we did experience a lot of negative behavior and negative impact in the state forest this summer. Much like the coastline, we were inundated with visitors who created, a lot of human waste, a lot of trash. Even with funding, we had to deploy larger dumpsters, expanded service. We have a lot of new dispersed sites, a lot of damaged resources because of parking. There seemed to be an overwhelming sense of we want to be in the forest and we're entitled to be wherever we want to be. So we had creation of new campsites and new trails and vegetation that was just flattened. And it was very difficult, for the staff out there this summer. We also had some negative impacts to the staff. And we also had users who shared with us their, decreased experience because of what was going on in the landscape. When you have someone call and say, yeah, I went to this trailhead and we had to be careful where we stepped because there were bags of human feces everywhere. That's not the experience we want to be having in our areas, but we were inundated. And again, we are happy to have, and we want the outdoor recreation community to be out. It was just overwhelming this summer, and it was a direct result of COVID, and everyone was cooped up and seeking an outdoor recreation experience, which is in itself, very positive that people think that is a safe place for them to go. We appreciate that. But yes, we had high volumes of visitors and lots of impacts, both positive and negative.
All right, well, thanks. It sounds like, obviously, has been reported and just confirmed here, huge amounts of visitors. And Arica, as you had mentioned, some of them are either, perhaps they're new recreationalists or they're just new to coming to specific areas and so may not know codes of conduct, other things. Because of that, it's exciting that new audiences perhaps are coming out, and it may be impacting visitor experience or experiences of people who, are used to coming, or it may be that people who are already there are finding gaps in infrastructure and services, and so they're not sure what to do. What other gaps do you think are out there that could be part of the reason that these experiences have led to kind of exacerbated problems related to responsible recreation? Are there any other things you guys want to dive into there?
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in there.
Right.
I think for the gorge and increasingly Mount Hood as well, I think folks come and they expect a certain type of experience that might be a little bit more similar to like a national park or like a really heavily serviced tourism destination. But the reality of those sites is that they aren't very super developed, and there's communities and people who live there and that get affected by the visitation. And so I think the whole thing is a lot of it is rooted in a miss between the expectations of what the visitors expect to find when they arrive there and what sort of support they will get when they're out there versus what's actually there. For example, the Human Wasteland's a really great example, but Angel's Rest is one of the most popular hikes in the gorge. There's no bathroom at that trailhead. Not only is there very limited parking, there's also no bathroom. You have to drive to Bridal Veil to find the nearest bathroom. And most folks, if they've been circling around for the last 20 minutes to try and snag a technically illegal parking spot, aren't going to leave to go use a restroom. They're going to go in the woods, and they might not know how to deal with that because they haven't had any experience with that education. Which gets me to my second point as far as gaps come. The way that we get information now is obviously all online, but the places that people go to get information about recreation aren't coalesced. And so people might, see a picture on Instagram and say, oh, that's really pretty. Looks like it's just outside of Portland. I'm going to go check it out. But there's no information that comes along with that pretty picture to say, the hike is this long, there's this much elevation gain, make sure you pack water, make sure you have your 10 essentials and all that other information that comes along with it. So there's a real technology challenge where social media is obviously having a huge impact on why people are visiting, along with COVID and other things. But the information that people should have in their toolkit when they do come to visit isn't reaching them in the way that it should. So that would be another gap that I see. And then along with that too, when people see other people engaging in those behaviors, it becomes normalized, and they don't maybe not realize that, going off trail is actually really negative impacts on the trail conditions, on the plants and the animal life and all those things that come along with it. But if they see everyone else doing it, it's not even going to cross their mind that it's a problem. So I think there's the last sort of the peak of the pyramid, and the challenge is to normalize stewardship behaviors where people, it's just understood that you don't go off trail, and it's just understood that you always pack out your dog poop bags because everyone else is doing it.
Yeah, I was gonna ask Jennifer, and then I was gonna go to Arica. I was gonna ask Jennifer about, there's two pieces that Natalie brought up there, and I wanted to ask Jennifer about one of them and Arica about the other. Jennifer, I wanted to get your thoughts on, that disconnect between the experience that people might think and what's actually out there, and in ways that you as a land management agency might be dealing with that. And then I was going to follow up with Arica. I guess we'll see what Jennifer says, but around how, as a tourism agency that's also working on management, is working to communicate effectively to people. But Jennifer, can you build on some of those points for us?
Well, I can, yes. And I think one of the things that is for us, so because we have a large population this summer that was new visitors, they stuck to the mainline highways and to the popular destinations. So for example, the Tillamook State Forest, people know Jones Creek, which is really the Wilson River, but they headed en masse to this one location. And I think for a lot of the reasons that Natalie said, because they'd seen a picture or someone who had been to that, and they headed to that destination. So that was the only destination they knew to go to. So when they got there, they found a place and they stayed there. So that is part of the issue. There are gaps in information. We have issues in some of our forest areas because we don't have any self-service. So people get there and then they try to find the information and they cannot. So we have to, have our information boards out and our information current. Oftentimes this summer you couldn't find it because there was, multiple deep cars in front of it. So there are some information gaps there. And I think I need you to restate the question again, because I think I got off track there a little bit.
Well, no, it's okay. But so you're having people come to some of these areas that maybe they're seeing online or social media, and sounds like they're, kind of few popular spots. What are some of the disconnects? So you've already listed some, but are there other disconnects that you're seeing, and then ways that you guys have been thinking about even addressing those?
Well, so we did quite a field campaign of information. We really had to go back to the basics this year to start getting out, the know before you go, and the know the risks, and some of the things Natalie touched on about this is a trail and this is how much the elevation gain is going to add to your experience. Some of the people that come to the state forest, they're afraid to even get off pavement. That's something that we deal with a lot. They're uncomfortable getting beyond those corridors. So for us, it's more, we need to get some more information out. We need to have some more education. We struggled this summer because we weren't fully staffed. Our education hub and our visitor center, the Tillamook Forest Center, was unable to open this year. So we really had to rely on field information and also on our field staff trying to make those connections with people in the field.
Okay, thanks. So Arica, let's turn to you. I know as a destination management organization, a tourism organization, you guys have a pretty broad mandate, and you guys are really probably some of the most innovative from an organizational standpoint around supporting a variety of tactics, not just promotional marketing. Can you share some of the tactics that you've deployed, both around visitor communication and other things that you've seen that have helped solve the problems that we're discussing?
Yeah, I think so. In general, we work with land management agencies like ODF, like state parks, ODFW, Fish and, we work with all the agencies. We really have a patchwork of them along the entire Oregon coast to identify all of these different sort of negative impacts that we're seeing from visitors every year. So seasonally, we know in the spring, people will try to rescue a baby seal. We see that there's more trash on the beach in the summer. We see that there's more storm and beach safety issues during the winter. So we already have this really comprehensive calendar and then can message according to like the season that's coming up. Something that we learned with that too is it's really easy to say like, don't do this, no, can't do this, like, and what we see is it does not go well with consumers. They don't say, wow, I didn't know that, thank you for telling me no. People will fight it, they will reject it, they will ignore it, they will challenge it. So a lot of our messaging is always an invitation to come. We're glad you're here, and here's how you can do it like a local. We did have to do a little bit of different messaging with COVID just due to the lack of restrooms. We didn't really have messaging around that previously. So totally the know before you go, and really trying to manage visitor expectations. We reached out to businesses along the coast. A lot of them said, like, please help us communicate that we don't have the same amount of staff that we did before. Some of them could even get like their normal food inventory due to breaks in the food chains. They don't have the same items on the menu that they did before. Like, please tell people to be kind to us. And so I feel like being kind is also this gap, which you were asking earlier. It's really easy for the visitor or for a tourist to be the bad guy. And on our social media channel in July, we posted this question on our Instagram. It's like a beautiful B-roll of the ocean. And it said, being next to the ocean makes me feel, and then our audience was just filling in the gap. And the responses, I watched this video like 20 times, got myself worked up. But the responses were peaceful, peace, calm, happy, relaxed, at peace, like peaceful, calm, like my dad is still with me, like the most beautiful responses. And I think it was just a good reminder, even to those of us in the tourism industry, that people aren't flooding the coast, that they're not coming out here, to our different recreation spots to cause issues. They're coming out to find peace and solitude and relaxation and create family memories during a very difficult year. So that other gap is understanding why local communities feel the pressure of tourism when we see that the streets are crowded and that there's extra trash and there's all these different issues. And that's like the community view. And then the consumer view or the visitor view is like, I'm going to go to a beautiful place with my family and like create a beautiful, peaceful moment. And so I think working sometimes on that perspective too is really important.
Thank you. I think that's great framing. And as we start to close out our panel here, I think, recognizing that people are coming out for peace, for beauty, for time with their family, and we're all here to try and support that and support those, creating a reality that will help them. So are there other solutions that you all have seen that will really help people recreate responsibly, and things that you've done as agencies that you've seen, are things that we can do to help move this cause forward? Why don't you go, Natalie?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Trail Ambassador program started as a way to address this need even before COVID. So like we were already kind of poised to be in a position to do that, which is great. And obviously COVID added a lot of additional stressors and new messaging and things like that needed to be incorporated. But I think I really love the point that you just made, Arica. But I think there's also an additional part of that, though, when folks get to a site that is really crowded or maybe underserviced, that it then becomes really difficult for them to achieve that goal of finding solitude, finding and making a peaceful memory when they're stressed out because they can't find a parking spot and the kid's screaming in the back seat and there's no bathroom and like the trash can's overflowing. And so then that gets them in a negative headspace too. And it's this really awful cycle. And so I think, it's a really complex problem that needs to be addressed at every single level. So that everyone can have the experience that they want out of it. And so I think the one thing that Trail Ambassadors does really powerfully, I think, is to help normalize behaviors on site. And Trail Ambassadors is really key because it's there when people get to the trailhead, but it's also before they start their hike. And so maybe they haven't heard about the 10 essentials before, but they're talking to a volunteer who can share with them, oh, actually, you know, this hike that you want to go on is 10 miles long to get to the viewpoint that you were hoping to see. Probably not a good option for small children and people who didn't bring water with them. Let's try this other hike instead. You're going to get really pretty views. There's more infrastructure. It's shorter. There's water at the trailhead, those kinds of things. And so they can give that information, safer alternatives where people won't be out of their element or may be forced to engage in behaviors that are negative. And then the other thing, too, that they do really well is help to normalize behaviors by, you know, oh, I see you have a dog with you. Did you remember to bring dog bags? Oh, you didn't? Here, I've got a roll right here. And when you bring the bag back, the trash can you can toss it in is right over here. And just like normalizing those behaviors and those expectations of actually, yeah, this is what everyone should be doing when they're out here is pack in, pack it out. And just that initial exposure to those expectations and those behavior options is a really powerful thing. And then I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the Take Care Out There campaign too, which has been a huge, huge benefit for Trail Ambassadors because that's been a great toolkit that Travel Oregon has provided that provides a lot of that messaging and those resources that volunteers can then just pass on directly to the visitor. So that's been a huge help as well and really taken a lot of that messaging burden off.
Thanks, Natalie. And the programs that you manage and you guys run at Trailkeepers is amazing. So thank you for all that work that you're doing. Jennifer, is there anything that you want to add, perhaps in a minute or so?
Yes, I'd like a Natalie at every trailhead to provide information to our users. You know, I'd just like to add that, you know, it's important that for the land management agencies, I think one of the best things we did this year was under the leadership of Kaylin at the Office of Outdoor Recreation was have the interagency conversations. That was key to everything that was happening during COVID. And that kept information flowing. That helped all of us know what was going on in our areas and what was going on in the other areas so we could better inform our users as well. And I hope that that work will get to continue because that is beneficial to all the land managers. It was a difficult summer. We all started with fewer staff, fewer resources, fewer facilities open. We did the best we could with the limited staff that we had. We're excited that we're going to get to start re-engaging volunteers. We look forward to actually having some time. You know, we've been dealing with our epic wildfire season. We haven't had actually much time to sit down and formulate a plan and look at what happened over the course of the summer, but we will be doing that work. And as always, we're always looking at visitor use patterns, assessing our needs, and then formulating plans for how we can improve our resources and our visitor experience. So more to come. Lots of work to go.
Thank you, Jennifer. And we definitely appreciate the Oregon Department of Forestry balancing natural resource stewardship and recreation, all the other work that's associated. So thank you for coming on here today. And Arica, I'm going to let you close it out with a short minute of any final additional things that you'd like, that you've seen that have worked and things that you want to share from the Oregon coast.
Yeah, I think Jennifer and Natalie did a great job. They mentioned everything. I just love emphasizing always seeking out new partnerships, whether that's nonprofits, businesses, state entities. Like even when we're not in a disaster mode, looking for those new partnerships is always extremely helpful because when we are in that disaster mode, when someone needs to step out due to funding or due to the emergency, another one of us can step in. And so building those relationships is absolutely essential. In addition to that, you know, there's always like simple solutions, feel simple, like adding more dumpsters. But, you know, just being really dynamic. I don't want to use the word flexible or unprecedented, but or Zoom. But I love the word dynamic. So how can you be dynamic in your business? How can your organization be dynamic? And even just being dynamic personally, I hate the phrase, well, it's always been this way. We've always done it this way. Like just throw it out the door. and just insert it with like, how can I be dynamic in this challenging situation and this challenging time, both on my team, my organization, and when I'm even out on the trail and I notice somebody that maybe isn't doing something correctly, like how can I be a dynamic person right now and be helpful? So those would be my big recommendations. And then either, donating your time or your funding to different organizations like Trailkeepers of Oregon, the Oregon Coast Trail Foundation, and just even saying, giving a nod and a thanks to our land management agency partners when they're out on the ground, those rangers that are out there. I think it really does make a difference when you just say, hey, I really appreciate what you're doing out there. So that's my big pitch.
All right. Thank you, Arica, and the innovative work that you're all doing at ACWA, the Oregon Coast Visitors Association, leading the way. And we also hear that you have a really great podcast. Can you just tell us the name of your podcast really quick?
I am the host of Big Tourism, looking at destination management conversations like this on the American Shoreline Podcast Network.
All right, thanks. Jennifer, Arica, Natalie, thank you so much for your time today and just coming on, staying on, and having this engaging conversation. I want to thank everyone for sticking around. The movie producers, the movies were fantastic. So for me, take care out there. Thank you. And I don't know if Aileen, there's anything else before we close out the session, but really appreciate it.